Alright, it's again PCN today. We are playing. We are just reacting to Sorry Online thing. It taking down this video out and I don't know what happened, but I don't know. We maybe um see which things I'm using. I'm using something I can use. There's a lot of okay. We watching the Harry the Dirty Dog YouTube. The one who's gonna read us is Barry White and it's been just in the underground published by Habercons and in second grade and it's 5 minutes long. It's 5 minutes long though. It's 5 minutes. Yeah, and as you know, subscribe, if you've been subscribed, but subscribe to the channel and that's why because I'm getting views on this one. And I wanna say to all of you, thank you for 10 views out of the channel. It's been a long time to reach it. It was a long time to reach it. You keep on viewing the channel when I'm gone. Yeah, you go view any channel you can be. Yeah, that's a long story. It's all my story. We just gonna react to it. We're not just gonna keep playing pause on sometimes. Let's watch this video.
Welcome to Storyline Online, brought to you by the Screen Actors Guild Foundation. I'm Betty White, and I think we're going to have a good time today. At least I know I am, because I'm going to be reading you a book, okay? I love animals, all animals, but maybe dogs in particular. So today, I'm going to be reading you a story about Harry the Dirty Dog. It's by Jean Zion, pictures by Margaret Bloy Graham. Harry was a white dog with black spots who liked everything except getting a bath. So one day when he heard the water running in the tub, he took the scrubbing brush and buried it in the backyard. Then he ran away from home. He played where they were fixing the street, and he got very dirty. He played at the railroad and got even dirtier. He played tag with other dogs and became dirtier still. He slid down a coal chute and got the dirtiest of all. In fact, he changed from a white dog with black spots to a black dog with white spots. Although there were many other things to do, Harry began to wonder if his family thought that he had really run away. He felt tired and hungry too. So, without stopping on the way, he ran back home. When Harry got to his house, he crawled through the fence and sat looking at the back door. One of the family looked out and said, "There's a strange dog in the backyard. By the way, has anyone seen Harry?" When Harry heard this, he tried very hard to show them he was Harry. He started to do all his old clever tricks. He flip-flopped and he flop-flipped. He rolled over and played dead. He danced and he sang. He did these tricks over and over again, but everyone shook their heads and said, "Oh no, it couldn't be Harry." Harry gave up and walked slowly toward the gate. Suddenly he stopped. He ran to a corner of the garden and started to dig furiously. Soon he jumped away from the hole, barking short, happy barks. He found the scrubbing brush, and carrying it in his mouth, he ran into the house. Up the stairs he dashed with his family following close behind. He jumped into the bathtub and sat up begging with the scrubbing brush in his mouth, a trick he'd certainly never done before. "This little doggy wants a bath," cried the little girl, and her father said, "Why don't you and your brother give him one?" Harry's bath was the soapiest one he'd ever had. It worked like magic. As soon as the children started to scrub, they began shouting, "Mommy, Daddy, look, come quick. It's Harry. It's Harry," they cried. Harry wagged his tail and was very, very happy. His family combed and brushed him lovingly, and he became once again a white dog with black spots. It was wonderful to be home. After dinner, Harry fell asleep in his favorite place, happily dreaming of how much fun it had been getting dirty. He slept so soundly, he didn't even feel the scrubbing brush he'd hidden under his pillow.
This one was right there.
Did you like that? Well, you're going to like this even better. This is my friend Ringo. I just met him, but he's a shelter puppy who found a wonderful forever home. So he has a happy ending, just as Harry the dirty dog had a happy ending. Thank you. Okay.
That's cool. She read this thing. She read that to us, and if you know who Betty White is, she was I don't know if she's an actor or something. I don't know if she's an actor, but I don't know. And this one we gonna watch A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. And it's gonna be seeing Austin was so the one who's gonna read this to that the book. The one who's reading the book is he was the actor of Game of Thrones, so he doesn't do it anymore, so he's gonna read it to us. Let's watch.
Hello and welcome to the Screen Actors Guild Foundation Book Pals. My name is Sean Astin, and I played Sam in Lord of the Rings. I love to read, especially to kids. I have a daughter whose name is Allie, and she loves it when I read to her. And we both love lima beans. The story I'm going to read to you is called A Bad Case of Stripes, written and illustrated by David Shannon. Allie loves this book. I hope you do too. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. And then she screamed. Her mother ran into the room, and she screamed too. "Oh, my heavens," she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered. "But just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids might say. And she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching?" "No," Camilla told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help her clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And off he went. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal. But when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dot. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon, everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change channels on a TV. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from the other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious." Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans. But she'd been laughed at enough for one day. Well, yes, I see," Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring in the specialists. We'll be right over." About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." Then the specialists went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed, tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. "Well, it's not the mumps," concluded Dr. Grop. "Or the measles," said Dr. Sponge. "Definitely not chicken pox," put in Dr. Cricket. "Or sunburn," said Dr. Young. "Try these," said the specialists. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. "Take one of each before bed," said Dr. Grop. Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with her face on it. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called. But this time, instead of the specialists, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at, and listened to. The expert wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. "It might be a virus," he announced with authority. Suddenly, funny little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. "Oh, possibly some form of bacteria," said Mr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. "Or it could be a fungus," added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla, and then at each other. "We need to go over the numbers again back at the lab," Dr. Gord explained. "We'll call you when we know something." But the experts didn't have a clue. much less a cure. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies, from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance, until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots, and berries, and crystals, and feathers, and a long, furry tail. But nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. "Close your eyes," she said. "Breathe deeply and become one with your room." "Well, I wish you hadn't said that," Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. "What are we gonna do?" cried Mrs. Cream. "It just keeps getting worse and worse." She began to sob. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said brightly, "but I think I can help." She went into Camilla's room and looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. "What we have here is a bad case of stripes, one of the worst I've ever seen." She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. "Here," she said, "these might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked Mrs. Cream. "Oh, my, no," replied the kind old woman. "There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans." "I'll bet you'd like some, wouldn't you?" she asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big, heaping plateful of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. "Yuck," she said. "No one likes lima beans, especially me." "Oh, dear," the old woman said sadly. "I guess I was wrong about you." She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good. Being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. "Wait," she cried. "The truth is, I really love lima beans." "I thought so," the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "I'm cured," she shouted. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of stripes again. Well, pretty good, right? I liked it. My daughter likes it. And we like lima beans. So, I don't know about you, but if you can get a hold of some of these things, well, books, lima beans, whatever. I recommend it.
So you're gonna read. That's a good book. That's a good book. He read to us because he was playing with that. All the ways we did is not original. Okay, let me do something because I'm really damn Mr. Parker. I don't know who's reading this to us. Jamazaki, I don't know who she is, but we're just going to watch the video of it.
Hi, I'm Jane Kasmarek. Welcome to the Screen Actors Guild Foundation Book Pals. Everybody knows that honey is delicious in tea, but can you imagine pouring it on a book? Well, Patricia Polacco can. She's the author and illustrator of a wonderful book called Thank You, Mr. Fokker. She begins with a special introduction, a prologue. The grandpa held the jar of honey so that all the family could see. Then he dipped a ladle into it and drizzled honey on the cover of a small book. The little girl had just turned 5. "Stand up, little one," he cooed. "I did this for your mother, your uncles, your older brother, and now you." Then he handed the book to her. "Taste." She dipped her finger into the honey and put it into her mouth. "What is that taste?" the grandma asked. The little girl answered, "Sweet." Then all of the family said in a single voice, "Yes, and so is knowledge. But knowledge is like the bee that made that sweet honey. You have to chase it through the pages of a book." The little girl knew that the promise to read was at last hers. Soon she was going to learn to read. Tricia, the littlest girl in the family, grew up loving books. Her school teacher mother read to her every night. Her red-headed brother brought his books home from school and shared them. And whenever she visited the family farm, her grandfather and grandmother read to her by the stone fireplace. When she turned 5 and went to kindergarten, most of all, she hoped to read. Each day she saw the kids in the first grade across the hall reading. And before the year was over, some of the kids in her own class began to read. But not Tricia. Still, she loved being at school because she could draw. The other kids would crowd around her and watch her do her magic with the crayons. "In first grade, you'll learn to read," her brother said. In first grade, Tricia sat in a circle with the other kids. They were all holding Our Neighborhood, their first reader, sounding out letters and words. They said b, 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 oi, boy, and l, ook, look. The teacher smiled at them when they put all the sounds together and got a word right. But when Tricia looked at the page, all she saw were wiggling shapes. And when she tried to sound out words, the other kids laughed at her. "Tricia, what are you looking at in that book?" they'd say. "I'm reading," she'd say back to them. But her teacher would move on to the next person. Always, when it was her turn to read, her teacher had to help her with every single word. And while the other kids moved up into the second reader and to the third reader, she stayed alone in Our Neighborhood. Tricia began to feel different. She began to feel dumb. The harder words got for the little girl, the more and more time she spent drawing. Oh, how she loved to draw. Or just sitting and dreaming, or when she could, going for walks with her grandmother. One summer day, she and her grandma were walking together in the small woods behind their farm. It was twilight. The air was sweet and warm. Fireflies were just coming up from the grasses. As they walked, Tricia said, "Grandma, do you think I'm different?" "Of course," her grandmother answered. "To be different is the miracle of life. You see all those little fireflies? Everyone is different." "Do you think I'm smart?" Tricia didn't feel smart. Her grandma hugged her. "You are the smartest, quickest, dearest little thing ever." Right then, the little girl felt safe in her grandma's arms. Reading didn't matter so much. Tricia's grandma used to say that the stars were holes in the sky. They were the light of heaven, coming from the other side. And she used to say that someday she would be on the other side, where the light comes from. One evening, they lay on the grass together and counted the lights from heaven. "You know," her grandmother said, "all of us will go there someday. Hang on to the grass, or you'll lift right off the ground, and there you'll be." They laughed, and they both hung on to the grass. But it was not long after that night that her grandmother must have let go of the grass, because she went to where the lights were, on the other side. And not long after that, Tricia's grandpa let go of the grass too. School seemed harder and harder now. Reading was just plain torture. When Sue Ellen read her page, or Tommy Bob read his page, they read so easily that Tricia would watch the tops of their heads to see if something was happening to their heads that wasn't happening to hers. And numbers were the hardest thing of all to read. She never added anything right. "Line the numbers up before you add them," the teacher would say. But when Tricia tried, the numbers looked like a stack of blocks, wobbly and ready to fall. She just knew. She was dumb. Then one day, her mother announced she had gotten a teaching job in California, a long way from the family farm in Michigan. Even though her grandma and grandpa were gone, the little girl didn't want to move. Maybe, though, the teachers and kids in her new school wouldn't know how dumb she was. She and her mother and brother moved across the country in a two-tone 1949 Plymouth. It took 5 days, but at the new school, it was the same. When she tried to read, she stumbled over words. The cat ran. She was reading like a baby in the 3rd grade. And when her teacher read along with them and called on Tricia for an answer, she gave the wrong answer every time. "Hey, dummy," a boy called to her on the playground. "How come you're so dumb?" Other kids stood near him and they laughed. Tricia could feel the tears burning in her eyes. How she longed to go back to her grandparents' farm in Michigan. Now Tricia wanted to go to school less and less. "I have a sore throat," she'd say to her mother, or "I have a stomach ache." She dreamed more and more and drew more and more, and she hated, hated, hated school. Then when Tricia started 5th grade, the school was all abuzz. There was a new teacher. He was tall and elegant. Everybody loved his striped coat and his slick gray pants. He wore the neatest clothes. All the usual teacher's pets gathered around him. Stevie Joe and Alice Marie, Davy and Michael Lee. But right from the start, it didn't seem to matter to Mr. Falker which kids were the cutest, or the smartest, or the best at anything. Mr. Falker would stand behind Tricia whenever she was drawing and whisper, "This is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Do you know how talented you are?" When he said this, even the kids who teased her would turn around in their seats and look at her drawings, but they still laughed whenever she gave the wrong answer. Then one day, she had to stand up and read, which she hated. She was stumbling through a page in Charlotte's Web, and the page was going all fuzzy, and the kids began to laugh out loud. Mr. Falker, in his plaid jacket and butterfly tie, said, "Stop! Are all of you so perfect that you can look at another person and find fault with her?" That was the last day anybody laughed out loud or made fun of her. All except Eric. He sat behind Tricia for 2 whole years, but he seemed almost to hate her. Tricia didn't know why. He waited by the door of the classroom for her and he pulled her hair. He waited for her on the playground, leaned in her face and called her toad. Tricia was afraid to turn any corner for fear Eric would be there. She felt completely alone. The only time she was really happy was when she was around Mr. Falker. He let her erase the blackboards. Only the best students got to do that. He patted her on the back whenever she got something right, and he looked hard and mean at any kid who teased her. But the nicer Mr. Falker was to Tricia, the worse Eric treated her. He got all the other kids to wait for her on the playground or in the cafeteria or even in the bathroom, and to jump out and call her stupid or ugly. And Tricia began to believe them. She discovered that if
Do
she
not
has to go to the
believe them.
bathroom just before recess,
Do not
she
believe
could
him.
hide under
Do
the
not
inside
believe
stairwell
him.
during the free time
I don't believe
and not have to
that.
go outside at all.
I don't believe any of that.
In that dark place, she felt completely safe. But one day at recess, Eric followed her to her secret hiding place. "Have you become a mole?" he laughed. And he pulled her out into the hall and he danced around her. "Dumbbell, dumbbell, Maggity, oh dumbbell." Tricia buried her head in her arms. She curled up into a ball. Suddenly she heard footsteps. It was Mr. Falker. He marched Eric down to the office. When he came back, he found Tricia. "I don't think you have to worry about that boy again," he said softly. "What was he teasing you about, little one?" "I don't know," Tricia shrugged. Tricia was sure Mr. Falker believed that she could read. She had learned to memorize what the kid next to her was reading. Or she'd wait for Mr. Falker to help her with a sentence. Then she'd say the same thing that he did. "Good," he would say. Then one day, Mr. Falker asked her to stay after school and help wash the blackboards. He put on music and brought out little sandwiches as they worked and talked. All at once, he said, "Let's play a game. I'll shout out letters. You write them on the board with a wet sponge as quickly as you can." "A," he shouted. She wiped a watery A. "8," he shouted, and she made a watery 8. 14, 3, D, M, Q, he shouted out. He shouted out many, many letters and numbers. Then he walked up behind her, and together they looked at the board. It was a watery mess. Tricia knew that none of the letters or numbers looked like they should. She threw the sponge down and tried to run. But Mr. Falker caught her arm and sank to his knees in front of her. "You poor baby," he said. "You think you're dumb, don't you? How awful for you to be so lonely and afraid." She sobbed. "But little one, don't you understand? You don't see letters or numbers the way other people do. And you've gotten through school all this time and fooled many, many good teachers." He smiled at her. That took cunning and smartness and such bravery. Then he stood up and finished washing the board. "We're going to change all that, girl. You're going to read. I promise you that." Now, almost every day after school, she met with Mr. Falker and Miss Plessy, a reading teacher. They did a lot of things she didn't even understand. At first, she made circles in sand, and then big sponge letters on the blackboard, going from left to right, left to right. Another day, they flicked letters on a screen, and Tricia shouted them out loud. Still other days, she worked with wooden blocks and built words. Letters, letters, letters. Words, words, words. Always sounding them out. And that felt good. But though she'd read words, she hadn't read a whole sentence. And deep down, she still felt dumb. And then one spring day, had it been 3 months or 4 months since they started? Mr. Falker put a book in front of her. She'd never seen it before. He picked a paragraph in the middle of a page and pointed at it. Almost as if it were magic, or if a light poured into her brain, the words and sentences started to take shape on the page as they never had before. She marched them off too slowly. She read a sentence, then another and another, and finally she'd read a paragraph, and she understood the whole thing. She didn't notice that Mr. Falker and Miss Plessy had tears in their eyes. And that night, Tricia ran home without stopping to catch her breath. She bounded up the front steps, threw open her front door, and ran through the dining room to the kitchen. She climbed up on the cupboard and grabbed a jar of honey. Then she went into the living room and found the book on a shelf, the very book that her grandpa had shown her so many years ago. She spooned honey on the cover and tasted the sweetness and said to herself, "The honey is sweet, and so is knowledge. But knowledge is like the bee who made the honey. It has to be chased through the pages of a book." Then she held the book, honey and all, close to her chest. She could feel tears roll down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. She was happy. So very happy. Now that's the end of the story, but it's not the end of the book. The author has a little surprise for us. Listen. The rest of the year became an odyssey of discovery and adventure for the little girl. She learned to love school. I know, because that little girl was me, Patricia Polacco. I saw Mr. Falker again some 30 years later at a wedding. I walked up to him and introduced myself. At first, he had difficulty placing me. Then I told him who I was and how he had changed my life so many years ago. He hugged me and asked me what I did for a living. "Why, Mr. Falker," I answered. "I make books for children." "Thank you, Mr. Falker. Thank you." And thank you for listening.
So Patricia Polacco says, "Thank you, Mr. Falker. Thank you." And that was the title of the book. Thank you, Mr. Falker. I don't know why that was the book of it, but that was really out. Was it right? Yeah, all of it. That's all. This is feather. Okay. This is gonna be all the books. Alright. Was going. Really can't. So maybe my cat's gonna be reading.
Juice, can I use your charger?
The one we should be reading. My knowledgeable about that's me and my cat. Well, my cat was in here and dying by now. I wish my cat was dead. And we got Elijah. We got Elijah Wood as a reader. I never heard of it. Elijah Wood was a greatest person. But I never heard of him, but he's gonna read this to us. Okay.
Hello, I'm Elijah Wood. Welcome to the SAG Foundation Storyline. I'll be reading a story today called Me and My Cat by Satoshi Kitamura, both illustrated and written by. So let's get into it. Late one night, an old lady in a pointed hat came in through my bedroom window. She brandished her broom at me and fired out some words. Then she left without saying goodbye. Nicholas, wake up. You'll be late for school. It must be Mom. It must be morning again. Mom dragged me to the bathroom and made me wash and dress. Downstairs, she interrupted my breakfast. She was furious. She carried me off to catch the school bus. I had gone, but I was still here. How strange, I thought to myself, pulling my whiskers. Whiskers? I rushed to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Leonardo, my cat, was staring back at me, but it wasn't him inside. It was me, Nicholas. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had turned into a cat. Don't panic, I told myself. I sat in the armchair to consider the situation carefully. I fell asleep. When I woke up, I felt a little better. Maybe it wasn't such a bad thing to be a cat. I didn't have to go to school, did I? I hopped onto the table and from there to the top of the
He's
shelf.
happy to not go to school.
What fun! I could never do this before. I decided to leap toward the cupboard on the other side of the room. Ready, set. Oops. Mom threw me out of the house. While I was rambling in the garden, Gioconda, the next-door neighbor cat, came up and licked me all over my face. Yuck. Time to go for a walk, I thought. The brick wall was warm under my paws. As I got close to Miss Thompson's garden, a funny thought occurred to me. Miss Thompson had given me Leonardo when he was a kitten. Leonardo was Heloise's son. Did that mean that Heloise was now my mother? Meow, meow. Hello, Mom, I called tentatively. She ignored me completely. Farther along, I came across 3 mean-looking cats. Excuse me, may I go through? I said. No, go away. It's our wall, replied one. Well, I think the wall belongs to everyone. But before I could finish my sentence, they were all over me. We punched and kicked and scratched one another until we fell off the wall and tangled. Wow, 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 wow. The dog came running toward us, barking furiously. The cats ran away in all directions. It was Bernard, Mr. Stone's dog. He's a sweet dog, my favorite in the neighborhood. Thanks, Bernard. You came just in time. But he chased me out of the garden. Of course, he couldn't recognize me. So this was the world that Leonardo lived in. Life was as tough and complicated as it was for humans. When I got home, I went into the house. Then I heard a scratching noise coming from the front door. It was me, back from school, trying to get in through the cat flap. But was he me, Nicholas? Or was he poor little Leonardo inside my body? Once indoors, he continued to behave strangely. He scratched himself earnestly, and when he was done, he challenged his shoes until they surrendered. He licked his sweater clean, then spent a long time sharpening his nails. He found the goldfish particularly fascinating. He tried to sort the washer and the yarn, but at last he gave up. He found the radiator and the litter box irresistible, but he didn't seem to like me at all. At last, Mom saw something was wrong with her son. She became so worried that she called the doctor and asked him to come at once. Nothing to worry about, said Dr. Weil. He's just a little overtired. Send him to bed early and he'll be fine in the morning. Mom was still very upset. She held him tight in her arms all evening. I felt sorry for them both. I climbed on Leonardo in my shape and stroked his cheek. He purred. Then Mom stroked me gently. I purred. Later that night, the old lady in the pointed hat came in through my bedroom window. "Sorry, love, I got the wrong address," she said. She brandished her broom and blurted out some words. Then she left without saying goodnight. "Nicholas, wake up! You'll be late for school," I heard Mom shouting. Everything was back to normal. At school, Mr. McGough sat on the table. He scratched himself, licked his shirt, and fell asleep for the rest of the lesson. Well, that's the end of our story.
Oh, he changed
It's been very
Leonardo.
enjoyable to sit here and read to you. If you'd like to rent this book from a library, you can go to your local library and get this book, and maybe you can read along with me. So you can click on me, and I'll read you the story, and you can read the book with me, which will be quite enjoyable. So thank you very much.
Oh. So we can read the book with him. So we can read the book with him. If we got the book. I got the book. I got the book, so. See, I'm not good at this flipping the books around. These are all books, so. You just do this. That's all I do. I need to just hit the things. I can just slide. That's all I can do. I just slide. I need my mouse. But how they? Give me my camera. Where's my nana's house? Okay, this one is No Mirror's My Nana's House. It's Tia, and I don't know the other girl's name. Forgot the name. What's the name again? I know the first one's Tina. Tina Tamara. It's like going in third grade level on the book. But Tina and Tamara, Tina and Tamara, they're the actors from, they're the actors of Sister. It was a show before. It was Tina Tamara in there, but they're gonna sing after that, but I'm not singing with them. But they're gonna read to us and sing with it. I don't know.
Hi, I'm Tia Mori.
And I'm Tamir Mori from
Sister. Welcome to the
I was right because I was very right. I was right because they were from Sister because I know they were in Sister because I knew it was a show before, and I told you it was a show before. If you missed that, if you know what it was, you will know what I say about it. You know what I say, and you know what I said, and let's keep watching this.
the Screen Actors Guild Foundation Book Pals. And today we're going to be reading No Mirrors in My Nana's House.
You know, Tamir, when I was first introduced to this book, I was very intrigued by the title, No Mirrors in My Nana's House. And I actually, had to ask myself, how would this world, or how would our, society actually be without any mirrors? I mean, would there be any stereotypes? I liked the book because I thought it
This is
sounded
his
like a
name.
song, and
Brothers,
it kind of
brothers,
had a
this
wonderful
is his
rhythm
name.
to it. So I'm very excited. I think it's very colorful and fun. And the author of the book is Lise Barnwell, and the illustrations and paintings are by Cynthia St. James. There were no mirrors in my Nana's house. No mirrors in my Nana's house. So the beauty that I saw in everything, the beauty in everything, was in her eyes, like the rising of the sun. There were no mirrors in my Nana's house. No mirrors in my Nana's house. So I never knew that my skin was too black. I never knew that my nose was too flat. I never knew that my clothes didn't fit. I never knew there were things that I missed. 'Cause the beauty in everything
was in her eyes, like the rising of the sun. There were no mirrors in my Nana's house. No mirrors in my Nana's house. I was intrigued by the cracks in the wall. I tasted with joy the dust that would fall. The noise in the hallway was music to me. The trash and the rubbish just cushioned my feet. And the beauty in everything was in her eyes, like the rising of the sun was in her eyes. There were no mirrors in my Nana's house. No mirrors in my Nana's house. The world outside was a magical place. I only knew love, and I never knew hate. And the beauty in everything was in her eyes, like the rising of the sun. Child, look deep into my eyes. Child, look deep into my eyes. Child, look deep into my eyes. Remember in the beginning when I told you this book reminded me of a song? Actually, it was inspired by a song. And you know the author, Issei Barnwell, she's in a group called Sweet Honey in the Rock. And now we get to listen to them sing. No mirrors in my Nana's house.
There were no mirrors in my Nana's house. No mirrors in my Nana's house. There were no mirrors in my Nana's house. No mirrors in my Nana's house. And the beauty that I saw in every
There are songs, but that's her. But that was the author singing it. But they're singing it with the author is doing.
I never knew that my skin was too black, and I never knew that my nose was too black, and I never knew that my clothes didn't fit, and I never knew there were things that I'd miss, 'cause the beauty in everything, yeah, was in her eyes, like the rising of the sun was in her eyes. Oh, there were no mirrors in my Nana's house, no mirrors in my Nana's in the house. There were no mirrors in my Nana's house, no mirrors in my Nana's in the house. I was intrigued by the cracks in the wall. The dust in the sun looked like snow that would fall. The noise in the hallway was music to me. The trash and the rubbish would cushion my feet. And the beauty in everything, oh, was in her eyes. Like the rising of the sun was in her eyes.
The illustrator is good.
There were no
It looked clean too. They didn't look clean though. That one looked clean. This one looked clean. But they took the video down because it wasn't the whole. I watched this before in my elementary school. I watched the whole thing. I watched this before too. I watched it before. Yeah, it was on red, then you have to finish in the books, then it goes back, then it goes to and it had that good animation. But it's different. But on the mobile is different. Why describe that boy, why he open my messages? I don't know why he's looking at my messages. Why he looking at my messages? That was my messages. They're private. I should be. I can't. I don't know how to make it private.
Wow. That was incredible. That was beautiful. Oh, you know, in a way, it made the book come alive to me.
Yeah, it really
Like
did. It
after
touches
reading
you.
it, right here, in the heart, in the soul. It was very beautiful. Well, I enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. And thanks for watching. Bye.
I know they're from Sister Sister because I've been knowing this. I know this. Oh, it said you could download the free app on this, but I didn't know it was a new app on this. if you search it up on Google Play, we will watch the whole thing. But I want to do it in the website. I want to do it on the website. I want to do it on the website. I just want to do it on the website because I want to. It doesn't matter. Okay, this is found. The night I found my dog. So this one is the one who's is going to be the one and only Amanda. Amanda is the one. She's the one. She's the actor of the nigga on the show, the Big Fat Liar. But we saw one who was the actor of Sister. The one who was the actor of Sister. The one in the Big Fat Liar. But that's what we're watching right now. But let's watch it. It's a good book. It's a good book that you always read.
Welcome to the Screen Actors Guild Foundation Book Pals. I'm Amanda Bynes. You might know me from All That, or the Nickelodeon's The Amanda Show, or Big Fat Liar.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Today I'm going to be reading a story about a dog, and I have 2 dogs, so I thought it was a pretty cool idea. It's called The Night I Followed the Dog. It's written and illustrated by Nina Layden. I have a dog. Nothing exotic or special, just an ordinary dog. In fact, I always thought he was a boring dog. What I mean is, he can fetch, roll over, and shake hands, but mostly he sleeps and eats. I used to think that our next-door neighbors had the best dog in the world. Their dog can sing and change the channels on the TV. Their dog always wins medals in obedience school. But I don't think their dog is so great now. Not since the night I followed my dog. Every night I let my dog out, and he runs off into the darkness with his tail wagging. The next morning I let him in, and he heads straight for the food bowl. But one morning I knew something was funny when I opened the door a little bit earlier than usual, and I saw my dog jump out of a limousine, wearing a tuxedo. Before I could look twice, he disappeared into the backyard, and I opened the kitchen door and whistled. When he came into the house, he was the same as he always is, hungry. I really wasn't sure that I believed what I had seen. So that night, I decided to follow him. I wore dark clothing so I wouldn't be noticed, and I left my bicycle near the door so I'd have it close by. When I let the dog out, I slipped out too. I took out the garbage so he wouldn't suspect anything. The dog went straight to his doghouse. I saw a light go on inside. Slowly, I snuck around the backyard and peeked into the doghouse. This is not the doghouse that I had helped build. Inside there was a living room, a bathroom, and a huge closet full of fancy clothes. The dog was in the bathroom. He was wearing a tuxedo and fumbling with the bow tie. When he came out, he casually walked out of the doghouse across the yard and down the street. I grabbed my bicycle and followed him. 2 blocks later, I saw a limousine pull over. The dog got in, and the car took off. I started pedaling faster. The car headed across town. I thought I would lose them, but luckily they were stopped by a few red lights. After a while, I found myself in a part of town that I had never seen before. The buildings all seemed to be empty, and it was very quiet. The limousine stopped. I hid and watched my dog get out. He disappeared into a building, and the limousine pulled away. There was nothing on the outside of the building, just 2 brass fire hydrants on either side of the entrance. I opened the door. At the end of the hall, there was a neon sign that said, "The Doghouse." I crept closer. It looked like some kind of club. I decided to get a closer look. The moment I opened the door, 2 mean-looking bulldogs appeared and said, "You can't come in here." I didn't know what to say, so I said, but I saw my dog. I think my dog's in here." Just then, my dog walked over and said, "It's okay, boys. He's with me." The bulldog said, "Sure, boss. Whatever you say, boss." For a minute that seemed like forever, I waited. Then my dog said, "I knew you'd find out eventually. Well, now you know. This is my place." I looked around. Finally, I asked, "What is this place?" My dog said, "This? This is a place where dogs come after a hard day.
What is this?
It's a place where we can relax. It's a place where we can talk about our problems with the mailman or with the poodle next door. See all the sofas? We can sit on the sofas here. We can get treats without having to lie down, roll over, or play dead. And if we want to chew on a shoe or chase our tail, no one will stop us. We have no masters here, no leashes, and no rolled up newspapers. This is a place where dogs can be dogs. We sat down. A cocker spaniel came by and asked me if I would like a bowl of water or some biscuits. Little by little, dogs of all kinds started coming in. Some danced, some talked. They all looked at me a little funny, but when they saw who I was with, they smiled and shook my hand. At one point, my dog waved to an Afghan with the camera. She came over to our table and took a picture of us together. Being with my dog made me feel like a movie star. Just when I was really starting to enjoy myself, I looked at my watch. I told my dog I had to leave or I'd get in trouble. He nodded. I think he was about to say something, but a glamorous greyhound grabbed his paw and whisked him onto the dance floor. As he was getting up, he tossed me the photo of the two of us. Then he bowed slightly and disappeared into the crowd. It was way past my bedtime. As I pedaled home into the cool night, I thought to myself, now I'm really going to be in the doghouse. But then again, that might not be so bad. The end. What'd you think? Yeah, I thought it was really great too. I should go home and read this to my dogs.
So she looks good. She looked good though. But the dogs of it? The dogs of it right now? So how the dogs get this before and find a whole this is I wish this girl don't touch me back. I'm in my friend, yeah, the one says some stupid. My right redhead. I don't know what she's doing.
Hi there. Welcome to Screen Actors Guild Foundation Book Pals. I am Melissa Gilbert, and I am the president of Screen Actors Guild. But more importantly, I am the mother of Mikey and Dakota and the stepmother of Sam and Lee. And one of our favorite things to do is to read. So it is going to be my pleasure to read to you today this book, My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother by Patricia Polacco. And here we go. My brother and our mother and I all lived with my grandparents on their farm in Union City, Michigan. Now, my babushka, my grandmother, knew lots of things. She knew just how to tell a good story. She knew how to make ordinary things magical. And she knew how to make the best chocolate cake in Michigan. After she told my brother and me a grand tale from her homeland, we'd always ask, "Bubby, is that true?" She'd answer, "Of course it's true, but it may not have happened." Then she'd laugh. Now, I knew that she loved me all right, but I couldn't quite understand how she could even like my older brother, Richard. He had orange hair that was like a wire. He was covered in freckles and looked like a weasel with glasses. The one thing that my bubby didn't seem to know was how perfectly awful my brother really was. Mind you, he was always nice whenever she was around us, but as soon as she'd leave, he would do something terrible to me and laugh. There were so many things that I couldn't stand about him. The worst was that he was always telling me he could do just about everything better than I. Bet I can pick more blackberries than you can, he jeered at me one day. No, you can't. Can't so. Cannot. Can, he whispered. Not, I said louder. Can, he whispered so low that I could hardly hear him. Not, I screamed back. We both picked berries for most of the afternoon. Well, he upped and did it. He not only picked more berries than I, he set a record that wasn't even challenged for the next 10 years. You make me sick, Richard Barber, I yelled at him. Then he smiled that smile that only a rotten, red-headed older brother could smile. I guess I would have to face it. He could run the fastest, climb the highest, throw the farthest, sit the longest, get the dirtiest, burp the loudest, and spit the farthest. He had no equal, certainly not me. And I'm 4 years older than you. Always have been, and always will be, he sneered. There had to be something I could do that he couldn't. Then, an inspired thought comforted me like a fresh breeze on a hot summer day. Oh, Richie, I cooed as I stood next to the rhubarb bushes. Do you like rhubarb? No, he said, it's the sourest stuff on this planet. Now I knew, at long last, that I had him. Bet I can eat more of this raw rhubarb than you can without getting the puckers, I challenged. I don't think so. I do. I don't, he said, narrowing his eyes. I do, I insisted. Don't, he hissed, looking smug. Do, I said furiously as I grabbed the first stalk and started chewing it almost down to the leaf. When I couldn't get one more sour bite into my mouth, he was still eating with relish. I thought you said you don't like rhubarb, I said through pursed lips. I don't like it. I love it, he announced as he popped the last stalk into his mouth. I was so mad, I couldn't even feel how my belly was starting to ache. I can't stand you, Richard Barber. I double dog can't stand you, I screamed as I went into the house to be consoled by my grandmother. Yeah, and I'm 4 years older than you too, you little twerp. Always have been and always will be, he called after me. Then he laughed that rotten, red-headed older brother laugh. That night at dinner, I could hardly eat. Have you been eating angry apples again, child? Bubby asked as she sliced me a huge wedge of rhubarb pie. I baked your favorite. Richard gave me one of his extra rotten, weasel-eyed, greeny-toothed grins. At bedtime, my Bubby came and sat on the edge of my bed like she did every night. Look, a falling star, she said. We watched it streak across the sky. Then she spit twice between her fingers and gave her chest a loud slap. Why did you do that, Bubby? I asked. I was making a wish. Didn't you know that wishes on falling stars come true? At last, I knew how I was going to get back at my brother. For the longest time, I watched the dark sky until I saw a star shoot across the night. Then I spit between my two fingers and slapped my chest. It was done. My wish was to do something, anything, better than my brother. I'd show him. The next morning, all I could think about was my wish. I was thinking about it so hard I almost didn't notice the wagons and trucks pulling into the field down the road near Four Corners. A traveling carnival, my brother shouted as he ran toward me. They're setting up right here in our field. Bet I can eat more hot dogs than you can, he teased. He was already starting it, but this time I was going to do something so incredible that even he would have to sit up and take notice. I had a star wish. I'd show my rotten red-headed older brother all right. That night, I ran straight for the merry-go-round. We must have taken 50 turns on that carousel. But then, my brother got off. I stayed on. I went around and around and around. I knew I could do this longer than you, I shouted to my brother, feeling proud, but just a bit dizzy. Trisha, I heard my bubby call out. Get off from that thing. It's time to go home. The last thing I remembered was stepping off from the platform. Next thing I knew, I woke up with Bubby sitting on the edge of my bed. Mom and Grandpa were there too. You gave us all a fright, Mama said. How do you feel? What happened? I asked. You fell, my rotten red-headed older brother announced with the biggest grin on his face. I don't know what we would have done, my bubby said softly. Your brother carried you all the way home, and then he had to run to get Dr. Lee. You had to have stitches. I watched it all, he said excitedly. You fell off the merry-go-round right into some pop bottles, my Gramps added. You even passed out, my brother chirped. Looks like you finally did something special. It was from that exact moment that our relationship changed somehow. Thanks, Richie, I said to him. What's a big brother for anyway, he said, blushing. We were all out in the yard. On hot Michigan nights, it was my family's custom to sleep outside where it was cool. Look at those stars, Bubby said quietly. Wishes are funny, aren't they? I said. Sometimes they come true differently than you think they will. Oh, that's why you have to be very careful what you wish for. It just may come true, Bubby said. Then she squeezed both of our hands. Hang on to the grass, she whispered. Why, Bub? My brother asked. Because if we don't, we might float up to the stars. Then she leaned over and kissed us both 3 times. I kiss your eyes, and I hold both of your hearts in my good keeping. And this night, I thank God that I walked this earth with both of you. Amen. Then we all just lay in our blankets in the gentle summer night. I'll always be 4 years older than you, though, my brother whispered softly. Then he smiled. All of us held one another's hands, and then we all drifted off to sleep. The end. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed reading it to you. And thank you so much for joining me here for SAG Foundation Book Pals. Bye.
That's good. It's a good book to read. I just didn't know that book was on right out. Okay, we will watch one. I'm gonna watch some. So we're gonna have. So we're gonna watch two stories left, and I'm gonna watch 2 stories left. We're not watching what we've been watching. We're just watching what my favorite ones. We'll watch this. The last one would be Emmy Pie. We're going. He's always going to read that to us.
Hello, I'm Robert Guillaume, and welcome to Storyline Online, brought to you by the Screen Actors Guild Foundation. Today we're going to be reading a story by Chi-Wan Chin called Guji Guji. An egg was rolling on the ground. It rolled through the trees. It rolled across the meadow. It rolled all the way down the hill. Finally, it rolled into a duck's nest. Mother Duck didn't notice. She was reading. Soon enough, the eggs began to crack. The first duckling to hatch had blue spots. Mother Duck called him Crayon. The second duckling had brown stripes. Zebra, Mother Duck decided. The third duckling was yellow, and Mother Duck named him Moonlight. A rather odd-looking duckling hatched from the fourth egg. Guji, Guji, he said, and that became his name. Mother Duck taught her 4 ducklings how to swim, how to dive, and how to waddle. Guji Guji always learned more quickly than the others. He was bigger and stronger too. But no matter how quick they were, or what they looked like, Mother Duck loved all her ducklings the same. Then, one terrible day, 3 crocodiles came out of the lake. They looked a lot like Guji Guji. The crocodiles were smiling, and when they laughed with their mouths wide open, the whole world could see their big pointed teeth. The 3 crocodiles saw Guji Guji and smiled some more. Look at that ridiculous crocodile. He's walking like a duck. Guji Guji heard them. I'm not walking like a duck. I am a duck, he explained. The crocodiles laughed. Look at yourself. No feathers, no beak, no big webbed feet. What you have is blue-gray skin, sharp claws, pointed teeth, and the smell of bad crocodile. He's just like us. The first crocodile said, your blue-gray body lets you hide underwater without being seen so you can get close to fat, delicious ducks. The second crocodile said, big, sharp claws help you hold fat, delicious ducks tightly so they don't get away. Third crocodile said, pointed teeth are necessary so you can chew fat, delicious ducks. Yum. The 3 crocodiles grinned. We know you live with the ducks. Take them to the bridge tomorrow and practice diving. We'll wait underneath with our mouths wide open. Why would I do that? Guji Guji asked. Why should I listen to you? Because we are all crocodiles, and crocodiles help each other. The bad crocodiles grinned again and vanished into the grass. Guji Guji felt terrible. He sat by the lake to think, is it true? Am I a bad crocodile too? He looked down into the lake and made a fierce face. Guji Guji laughed. He looked ridiculous. I am not a bad crocodile. Of course, I'm not exactly a duck either. But the 3 crocodiles are nasty and they want to eat my family. I must think of a way to stop them. Guji Guji thought and thought until finally he thought of a good idea. He went home happy and content. That night, the three bad crocodiles sharpened their pointed teeth, all the while thinking of fat, delicious ducks. They were ready for their feast. The next day, Gucci Gucci did as he had been told. He took the flock of ducks to the bridge, practiced diving. The three bad crocodiles were waiting for the ducks underneath the bridge. It wasn't fat, delicious ducks that dropped from the bridge, though. It was three big, high rocks. The crocodiles bit down. Crack, 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 went their pointed teeth. The three bad crocodiles ran as fast as they could. In barely a minute, they were nowhere to be seen. Gucci Gucci had saved the ducks. Gucci Gucci was the duck hero of the day. That night, all the ducks danced and celebrated. Gucci Gucci continued to live with Mother Duck, Crayon, Zebra, and Moonlight. And every day he became a stronger and happier croco-duck. Yeah.
Okay. They know. We know what happened to. We know what happened to. We know what happened to. But I don't. I never had the book. I have the Rainforest book, but I don't know where it's at right now. Pop. I heard that book before on this website. I had the standalone book too. This was Masterpiece Week. You watched that before. I don't want to watch what I had watched. We're gonna make another video of it though. We're gonna make another video of it. But I'm gonna keep this on my Google search. This one's called Emily Pie, and it's really read by Karen Maida, and 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 the book called Emily Pie, and there's a first and third grade level, and it's written by Derek Madison and it's illustrated by Tara Conway King, and it's published by Chronicles Book. But I don't know about all that. That's my book was a Chronicle.
Welcome to Book Pals, Storyline Online, brought to you by the Screen Actors Guild Foundation. My name is Cameron Manheim. You may know me from the practice, but I hope not, because it was on way past your bedtime. Today, I'm going to read Enemy Pie, written by Derek Munson and illustrated by Tara Callahan King. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse in the backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been the perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood, right next door to my best friend Stanley. I did not like Jeremy Ross. He laughed at me when he struck me out at the baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline. I wasn't even invited, but my best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list until he moved into the neighborhood. But as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse, where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too.
but he knew a good way to get rid of them, and I asked him to tell me how. Tell you how? I'll show you how, he said, and he pulled a really old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. And inside, there was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. And Dad held it up and he squinted at it. "Enemy pie," he said, satisfied. You may be wondering what exactly is in enemy pie. I was wondering too, but Dad said the recipe was so secret he couldn't even tell me. I decided it must be magic, and I begged him to tell me something, anything. "I'll tell you this," he said, "enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies." Of course, that got my mind working. What kind of things, disgusting things, would I put into a pie for an enemy? I brought Dad some weeds from the garden, but he just shook his head. I brought him earthworms and rocks, but he didn't think he needed those. I gave him the gum that I'd been chewing on all morning. He gave it right back to me. I went out to play alone. I shot baskets until the ball got stuck up on the roof. I threw a boomerang, it never came back to me. And all the while, I listened to my dad chopping, stirring, blending the ingredients of enemy pie. This could be a great summer after all. Enemy pie was going to be awful. I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell, or worse yet, what it was going to look like.
Oh, don't do this.
When I was in the backyard looking for ladybugs,
What did happen? What happened?
I smelled something really, really, really good. And as far as I could tell, it was coming from our kitchen.
It's shutting off, but I don't want to reset it, because if I watch it, it's gonna let me go all the way back, and I will not watch it back. Let's keep watching.
I was a bit confused. I went in to ask my dad what was wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good, but Dad was smart. "If enemy pie smelled bad, your enemy would never eat it," he said. I could tell he had made enemy pie before. The buzzer rang, and Dad put on the oven mitts and pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked like plain old pie. It looked good enough to eat. I was catching on. But still, I wasn't really sure how this enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out, or their breath stinky. Maybe it made bullies cry. I asked my dad, but he was no help. He wouldn't tell me a thing. But while the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job. He talked quietly. "There's one part of enemy pie that I can't do. And in order for it to work, you need to spend a day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. It's not easy, but that's the only way enemy pie can work. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Of course I was. It sounded horrible. It was scary, but it was worth a try. All I had to do was spend one day with Jeremy Ross, and then he'd be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I rode my bike to his house, and I knocked on the door. When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. He stood at the other side of the screen door, and he looked at me, waiting for me to say something. I was nervous. "Can you play?" I asked. And he looked confused. "I'll go ask my mom," he said. And he came back with the shoes in his hand. His mom walked around the corner to say hello. "You boys stay out of trouble," she said, smiling. We rode bikes for a while and played on the trampoline. Then we made some water balloons and threw them at the neighborhood girls. But we missed. Jeremy's mom made us lunch, and after lunch, we went over to my house. It was strange. I was kind of having fun with my enemy. He almost seemed nice. But of course I couldn't tell my dad that, since he'd been working so hard to make the enemy pie. Jeremy Ross liked my basketball hoop. He said he wished that he had a basketball hoop, but they didn't have room for one. I let him win a game, just to be nice. Jeremy Ross knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it and it came right back to him. I threw it and it went over my house into the backyard. And when we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my treehouse. My treehouse was my treehouse. I was the boss. If my sister wanted in, I didn't have to let her. If my dad wanted in, I didn't have to let him. And Jeremy Ross wanted in. Can we go in it? He asked. I knew he was going to ask me that. But he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list, and enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me how to throw a boomerang, and he did have me over for lunch.
It's like when he the boy said he don't need to let his sister in. She don't want she don't have to he don't have to let her sister in. He don't want to let his dad in. He can't just let him let's just go in. His sister never said let's go in. And he shouldn't let he don't have to tell his dad let's go into my house. He didn't say it, but Jeremy said can we go in, and the guy who was on he was like this. He was like this. No. Then this is what he did. I knew he would say that. He knew. Like he just knew about it. Like he just knew for some reason. Like he knew. Everybody else he knew. Like he knew everything it is. And let's keep watching this.
Did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy. Okay, I said, but hold on. I climbed up ahead of him and I tore the enemy list off the wall. Whew. I had a checkerboard and some cards in the treehouse, and we played games until my dad called us down for dinner. We pretended we didn't hear him, but when he came out to get us, we tried to hide from him. But somehow he found us. Dad made us macaroni and cheese for dinner, my favorite. It was Jeremy's favorite too. Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think that maybe we should just forget about the enemy pie. But sure enough, after dinner, Dad brought out the pie, and I watched as he cut it into 8 thick slices. Dad, I said, it sure is nice to have a new friend in the neighborhood. I was trying to get his attention and trying to tell him that Jeremy Ross was no longer my enemy, but Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was just pretending. Dad dished up 3 plates side by side with big pieces of pie and giant scoops of ice cream. And he passed one to me and one to Jeremy. Wow, Jeremy said, looking at the pie. My dad never makes pie like this. It was at this point that I panicked. I didn't want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. I couldn't let him eat it. Jeremy, don't eat it. It's bad pie. I think it's poisonous or something. And Jeremy's fork stopped before reaching his mouth, and he crumpled his eyebrows and he looked at me funny. I felt so relieved. I had saved his life. I was a hero. Well, if it's so bad, Jeremy asked, then why has your dad already eaten half of it? Well, I turned to look at my dad. Sure enough, he was eating enemy pie. Good stuff, he mumbled through a mouthful. And that was all he said. And I sat there watching him eating enemy pie for a few seconds. Dad was laughing, Jeremy was happily eating, and neither of them was losing any hair. Seemed safe enough. So I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. After dessert, Jeremy rode his bike home, but not before inviting me over to play on his trampoline in the morning. He said he was going to teach me how to flip. As for enemy pie, I still don't know how to make it. I still wonder if enemies really do hate it, or if their hair falls out, or their breath turns bad. I don't know if I'll ever get an answer, because I just lost my best enemy.
She loved the book. She just tells you love the book. Okay, that was the end of that video. Ooh, I cannot make no intro or a outro. So I'm going to edit this out. I don't know which one I'm going to edit. I don't know. I don't know what day I'm going to do Would You Rather. Then I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow, but I don't know if I'm going to do it in the morning. I'll wake up at 5:30. If it was 6, if it's 6 o'clock, I think I will start it. I don't know how much I'll be in the shower. I don't know. But if I know how to do it, maybe we could do a Super Smash Bros. Brawl or Mario Wii or any of the games you want me to do. I just don't. You never tell me what to play. You never tell me what to play. You never tell me what to play, but I just do it what I want it to do. So you don't need to tell me what to play. But my friend Mason said, I want to see. He gave me a challenge for my channel. He gave me a challenge. He gave me a challenge for my channel. And he said, I want to see how you've been the subscriber before. I said, you want me to start as a broadcast? He said, yeah. And he said, yeah. Then I went into the broadcast, started the settings, and I started broadcast, and my broadcast didn't start. My broadcast didn't start. My broadcast didn't start. My broadcast did not start. It was preparing for some reason. Preparing was still going. Preparing was it said preparing, but my red light is not going on. It's not on air. It was never been on air. I was like, wait a minute. I'm not on air. I said I'm not on air. I said I'm not on air. He said, are you on air? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm not on air. And I told him I'm not on air. That's what I said. I said, I'm not on air. I really wasn't on air. I said, I wasn't on air. I was never been on air before because I've been on air before. I've been on air on PS4 though. I was on air when I did the GTA 5 live stream on story mode because I can't get online though. You can't get online. But it was never. I never get online. I never get on air. I can't get on air on Black Ops 4 because I can't. And I don't know how to put this description. I try and put a description on when the bottom has a when you broadcast and you put the bottom and say something about it and you try and put something. I was gonna say which rather starts tomorrow. I was gonna say that, but that's what I was gonna say because I have a YouTube certified on the phone. I had one certified on 2 phones, and I certified on Google. And I made Google account before. I made it in December 14th when I was in 10th grade, and I started my channel each year. And I started in each year because I don't want to start when I was a kid. I want to start when I'm a teenager. I was a kid and I sound like a kid, then my voice changes again. It changes. And when I changed it, it changed the whole video when I'm talking about it. And I don't want to talk the whole thing, but I don't want to talk the whole of the channel, so I'll see you in the video. Love you. Bye-bye.